Hi, my name is Ben. I currently work for a Series A funded scale-up that has more than doubled in revenue since I joined a year ago. And while working there, I built a business that ended up matching and exceeding my salary. And I'm currently working on building a bootcamp for startup founders that don't want to take on venture capital. I wanted to do something a little bit different today, which is go over my Twitter, which is where I post notes and lessons that I've learned from mistakes that I make throughout the week. And I thought this would be helpful because I'm relearning a lot of the lessons that I had to learn the first time I built a business. And so if you're currently building a business, I think it will be relevant to you. And the first lesson is, founders are so desperate to seem big, they imitate the flaws of big companies. Systems and anonymous indifference are flaws born out of scale, not a precursor to success. Now, I see this happen with so many of the founders that I speak to, which is they will go into a problem and try and think about how to solve it in a way that scales immediately. And I think this happens because the companies that you hear about, the companies that end up in the news that you want to be like, are inevitably big and successful companies. And what people, I think, fail to realize is the big companies have to do things a certain way because there are complexities introduced by scale, right? When you start to grow, when you start to gain a ton of users, and when you start to have to execute on a massive leveraged scale, you have to do things in a different way that you can't do when you're starting out. But this is not an advantage. It's not better to do things in a way that's impersonal and scalable. It's that in order to scale, you have to sacrifice the sort of personal element of delivering a service. And so when you're small, when you're just starting out, it's actually an advantage that you have to be able to deliver things in a way that doesn't scale. And there are two advantages of doing this. Number one is that you get to actually talk to users and you will get to learn what people like and dislike about your service way faster by delivering a more bespoke service. And the second point is that you deliver a higher value service because you're paying more attention to each individual user. Stripe, for example, the onboarding process for Stripe when they just started out was that the CEO would come over to your office and install the software directly on your laptop. And that was their onboarding. And from the user's perspective, imagine how much more valuable that is, right? Imagine you sign up for a service and the CEO of the company comes over to you and gives you a personal introduction, right? Like, that is valuable. And so it's not a flaw that you can be more personal. It's an advantage that you have that you should absolutely embrace when you're starting out. The second one is copy from the greats. When copying, study the frameworks, not just the contents. Learning the rules lets you adapt to your own purpose. Copying blindly makes you reliant on the original. So I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who runs a script review company, and he's working on a script for himself. He's going to be a director and he's killing it. He's doing a really good job. And I was asking him about newsletters because I just launched one and I wanted to learn from him because he has a really successful one with thousands of readers. And I was asking him a bunch of questions and we came to the question of lead magnets, right? I was like, how do you actually get people to sign up to your newsletter? And he said, oh, it's really simple. I have a 40-page document about how to review your script, and I just send that out to people for free in exchange for signing up. And I was like, oh, okay, a lead magnet, great. Can I see it? And so he sent me the lead magnet, and I remember reading it. I remember reading the introduction and the welcome footnote and thinking, oh my God, I didn't realize you could do this. Now, bear in mind, his job is to be exceptional at writing, right? His whole thing is that he reviews film writers' scripts and makes them better. So it makes sense that he would be exceptional at writing as a medium. But I didn't realize that you could apply that kind of artistry to something like a lead magnet. And so the difference that I noticed was, and I'm sure if you're in the entrepreneur space, if you're in the startup space, you've seen lead magnets like this that are really tactical, that are breaking down the steps to get to an outcome, right? And these would be stuff like how to double your conversion rate with better hooks, how to write cold emails that get you like a 25% response rate, right? I'm sure we've all seen writing like this. But the way that he approached his lead magnet was, there was almost a warmth to it. It was like he was leading the reader through a journey, through a storyline, where the protagonist was the reader, the person that was reading the lead magnet, and the journey was the journey of getting better at screenwriting. I know it sounds really ambiguous because I'm still studying it, I'm still trying to learn from it, but basically, when you see great work, try and ask the question, what makes this great? Instead of just copying it blindly, try and ask, how do I get myself closer to what this is, right? Because when you ask that, then you're no longer just blindly copying, then you're no longer just being a subset of that great work. You can actually start to adapt and learn and improve the way that you do your own work as a result of this. Next, we have the offer is not optional. People will not buy if you don't know what to sell. So this is, I think, especially relevant if you're just starting out your company and you don't have a set list of customers and you don't know what your ideal customer profile looks like and you don't have a inflow of customers that you can kind of test offers against. So let's take a step back and just ask this question. What needs to be true in order for someone who doesn't know who you are to turn into a paying customer? Right? Number one, they have to hear about you. They have to know who you are. Somehow you tell them or they learn from an ad, whatever. They have to learn about who you are. Number two, you have to make them an offer. They don't know anything about you, so you have to be the one that proactively makes an offer to them. Number three, they have to decide whether they trust you enough to fulfill this offer for them, to solve this problem for them. And then number four, there's sort of the transaction. And number five, there's the delivery of the actual product, whatever it is that you're selling, right? So in essence, there's kind of like three different parts, right? Number one, which is letting someone know about something. Number two, which is the offer, the communication of the value that you provide. And number three is the actual product, the actual value that you provide. Most people focus on parts 1 and 3. Most people focus on the advertising, the process of letting known, and the product, the actual thing that you're fulfilling for them. But the offer is the critical part that ties the two together, right? Let's think about this the other way around. Imagine you have an amazing product, but a really bad offer. You do a really bad job at communicating the value that you provide to someone. No one's going to buy from you if that's the case. I'm sure all of us have clicked on an ad on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, gone on some random website, scrolled through for a little bit and then be like, not for me. Or worse, I don't know what this is and you just click away and never think about it again. What had happened there? It doesn't matter how good the actual product is. If the offer is not spelt out clearly, then no one is going to buy. If someone is confused about the value that you provide, then they're not going to buy from you. So you have to remember that the offer is a crucial part of your business. If you don't have a good offer, then no one is going to buy from you. And I think it's a pitfall that a lot of people, including myself, falls into, because when you don't have an offer, when you don't know what your core offer is, it's tempting to make your offer really generic because you don't know what works yet. But that's not actually how you do things, right? It's this counterintuitive process where you have to assume, you have to act like the offer that you are testing is the offer that is going to work, right? So for example, with GOM Venture Club, the different sort of elements of the offer that I'm testing are the bootcamp, the community, the weekly mentorship sessions, the interviews that I hold with people, the accountability sessions, and the different types of people that I can help are college founders, college students, people that have full-time jobs that want to be a founder but don't know how to, or it could be founders that don't want to take on venture debt in order to build their business, right? Founders that want cash flow positive businesses. The way that I test which of those offers, which of those customer profiles is actually my ideal customer profile is not to send out some kind of blanket statement that says, I help your startup. It's to really narrow down my messaging with each of my outreach methods, each of my adverts, to the point where it's only targeting one of those profiles. And then assuming, acting like that is the offer that is going to work. assuming that that is the person that is going to get the most value out of the service I provide, and acting as if that's the case. Right? It's this counterintuitive thing where you also almost have to delude yourself into acting like you know the answer in order to actually find the answer. So if you don't have an offer yet, get really, really specific. Act as if that is the offer that is going to work, and test it against the world. Gather evidence, see if the offer does work, and if it doesn't, no harm done. You've learned what doesn't work, and then you can move on to the next one. And then finally, we have standards come from what you tolerate. Optimize for great work where possible, not speed of execution. Last week, I had to give a presentation at work, and it was a 30-minute presentation, and I spent probably around 20 hours prepping for it. I had 93 slides. Now, I didn't have to do that. I could have gotten it done in 5 hours probably, or less time. But because I've spent hundreds of hours over my career making presentations and teaching through presentations, my standard for what makes a good presentation is incredibly high. It's very, very high. And I know that if I put a lot of effort into a presentation, I can make it better. I can make it much better. And while it might have been easier and less work for me to pump out the presentation in 5 hours and move on to other things, I would have known that that was not the best work that I could do. I think this is something that becomes more relevant later on as you gain a bit of specific domain expertise, as you have a couple of hundred hours or couple of thousand hours within a specific subject. You learn to appreciate what good work looks like. And when you do that, the only way that you can actually feel proud of the work that you do, and the only way that you actually improve the standard of work that you do, is to put in the amount of work, the amount of hours that is required to produce good results. Like, once you know what good looks like, don't be afraid to put in what some might consider an unreasonable amount of hours to make it good, because that's where the marginal returns are. Imagine an Olympic sprinter. Right. The difference between the best sprinter, the gold medal sprinter, and the silver medal sprinter can be less than half a second. But the difference in outcome is everything. There is disproportionate returns based on incremental gains at the very top end of any pursuit. On the flip side, however, it can be really easy to use this as an excuse to procrastinate. So be wary of that. Like, only do this if you know what you can work on to actually make something better. And if you're not sure what you can do to make something better, then ship it, because then you're just wasting time. So those are a couple of notes from my week. If you like that kind of format, then let me know in the comments. And if you want to see more, then subscribe.